I think, the Europeans should understand that actually it's not Russia that's threatening them. It's the U.S. It's not Russia that blew up their pipeline. It was the U.S. It's not Russia that dictates to them, what they can do and what they can't do. And, with horrible economic consequences, it's the U.S. And the U.S. dominates them, through NATO in large part. So they should just get rid of NATO. The Europeans, if they had any sense, and there, again, there are dissident political parties that see this, but all the ruling parties in Europe are, with the exception, of course, of Hungary and Slovakia, don't see it. They prefer to be vassals.
How can the Europeans be okay with this for so long? Like at some point, the truth is going to come through that this is the United States that is destroying Europe, not Russia. It's the U.S. that is that it blew up the pipeline, that is forcing this conflict to go on with no real plan. And then when we leave, we're just going to let Europe pick up the pieces, I guess, right? I mean,
yeah.
There has to be... Can you talk about the situation in Europe right now, just the economy? Like, how bad is it for Europeans right now?
Right. Well, it's quite bad. I know that, like, the British economy is just in tatters. It's it hasn't grown at all, I think, over the last few years, But the powerhouse of the European economy, of course, is Germany. That's really been the EU. When you look at EU economic figures, it's really Germany that you're looking at. Germany is what has made the EU, and Germany is really suffering. I think everyone's heard that Volkswagen, for the first time ever, is shutting down factories within Germany. I think they're shutting down 3 or 4, and that is a serious blow to the German economy. There's going to be all kinds of secondary effects. I mean, again, there's all, for every factory that's shut down, there are going to be so many suppliers of parts and other services that are going to shut down. There's going to be a cascading effect. Germany is deindustrializing, and I think the consequence, the overall impact of that cannot be overstated. It really means the end of European economic growth and vibrancy. Europe is going to see, used to be, one of the major economic centers of the world. That's why the G7 dominated the world. It was the US, Japan, and Europe, basically. Japan has been kind of, still a major economy, but it hasn't grown really very much at all in the last few decades. And Europe is fading. I mean, it's part of this general decline, of the G7. But anyway, Europe needs to wake up and reconsider the course that it's chosen, and maybe reconsider its allies. Again, it might do a lot better with, joining hands with Russia. I think that's the natural economic partnership, right? And that's what they had. That was a lot of what powered Europe over the last few decades. Or, again, cheap energy and other commodities from Russia, but then all kinds of investment opportunities within Russia. Now, they haven't abandoned that entirely. Like when I was in Russia, you could still see there was quite a European presence, but it's been greatly reduced. They've lost a lot of money there. German companies, I think in particular, a lot of manufacturing companies have lost a great deal of money. They had some very large projects in Russia, and those were shut down.
I think if Germany restores relations with Russia, that they will be able to turn their economy around rather quickly.
It'll take some time, but I think that's a fair statement. I mean, it just seems obvious to me that was a beneficial partnership. That was, economic relations are all about mutual benefit, and it was a mutually beneficial relationship. And I remember at the time when the sanctions were announced, I thought it was going to do some real harm to Russia, and it only did temporary harm. But at the same time, it's like, every time you have some kind of economic transaction or relationship, the reason that economic relationship exists is because it's mutually beneficial. So if Europe is severing these ties, they're obviously hurting themselves too. I mean, that's just sort of a law of economics. And it just seemed like this was rather bizarre. Who are they punishing? They're obviously choosing to punish themselves. And it turned out that actually those relationships were much more important to Europe than they were to Russia. But the fact that it was going to hurt Europe should have been obvious to anybody with some sort of grasp of economics. But clearly, these people, that the people who lead Europe either don't understand economics. I think that's true of a lot of them, or it's just that they completely lost their reason. They just they were caught up in this hysteria, and rational thinking was just was the first victim.
Right. I feel like it's inevitable then. I mean, these economic forces will eventually pull Europe and Russia back together, how they should be. And the U.S. has essentially driven this temporary wedge between them. But I don't see it lasting forever. It's just things get worse for the Europeans. I mean, we'll see how this winter goes. I mean, this is where energy prices, people really start to feel it. It just seems like we will have... I see the outcome being that we will turn Europe against the United States. Even Western Europe. It
may eventually happen. I mean, that's the objective reality. And again, it's just the establishment parties are just deeply invested in this other interpretation of events, but it's a false reality that they've invested themselves in, and it cannot last. They cannot maintain this fiction that they're hysterically maintaining now.